The volcanic world of Pyra. 743 boiled beneath the Federation's patrol ship, glowing red like a wound in space. Molten rivers cut through black stone plains, and plumes of ash rose high enough to scrape the upper atmosphere. The air shimmered with heat and poison. No life should have existed here, yet the scanner showed movement. Inspector Liar leaned forward, his metallic eyes flickering through different spectrums. He was Trask, tall, thin, skin like polished brass, and born for order. His species lived for rules, for structure, for the calm rhythm of laws obeyed. As he stared down at the messy sprawl below, his lips curled. Humans, he muttered. The camp looked nothing like an official Federation site. It was chaos, prefab shelters, canvas tents, equipment piles glowing under the lava light. Every sensor warned of deadly gases, sulfur, ash, acids. Yet humans had landed there to dig into the ruins of an ancient alien crash. They were here for treasure, knowledge, or both. Beside him, Zek, younger and more excitable, adjusted his own scanner. Atmospheric toxins, lethal in 30 minutes without filters, he said. And they've been here for weeks. Liar's fingers glided across his wrist display, calling up the violation forms. Then we'll make sure they pay for every minute, he said. Bureaucracy was comfort. Rules made sense. Humans never did. Their shuttle descended, cutting through the haze. Lava flares burst in the distance, glowing reflections dancing on their visors. As they landed, the shuttle's metal feet sank slightly into the half-molten rock. The temperature inside their suits climbed. Even through the filters, the air smelled of sulfur and static. Air filters active, Liar ordered automatically. The words were ritual. Rules demanded respect. He sealed his helmet, feeling the soft hum of the purification field around his face. His lungs filled with clean, machine-scrubbed air, perfection. Zek followed his lead. Systems green. Filtration stable. The shuttle doors hissed open. Heat slammed into them like a wall. Beyond the ramp, the ground glowed faintly under the ash, and rivers of orange lava cracked the horizon. Liar began recording immediately. Every temperature spike, every trace gas reading, every step they took. Order and chaos. That was his job. Then something strange happened. A movement in the distance, a figure walking across the dig site. Humanoid. Tall. No helmet. No filter unit on his chest. Bare skin in the poisonous air. Liar froze. His cybernetic eyes zoomed in automatically. The data feed glitched, recalibrated, and came back clean. No protective field. No oxygen tank. The man was breathing, steady, calm, casual, in an atmosphere that could melt lungs. That's impossible, Zek whispered. Liar scanned again. Infrared showed the same. Ultraviolet, electromagnetic, all confirmed the same horrifying truth. The human wasn't dying. He wasn't even coughing. He was fine. The human's face was covered in soot and sweat. His chest rose and fell slowly, almost lazily. He even stopped to wave at someone, laughing, before walking back toward tent. The sight made every sensor alarm in Liar's suit scream. Violation of Code 7.4, subsection B, Liar said automatically, voice sharp. Failure to utilize respiratory protection in a toxic environment. Fine, 20,000 credits per individual. His words were automatic, but his voice trembled. He looked back at Zek. Do you see any kind of protective mechanism? Zek shook his head. No filters. No tech. Just lungs. Liar's stomach turned. The Federation had studied hundreds of species across the galaxy. None could survive Pyra 743's atmosphere. The air here would rip the lining of the throat and corrode the lungs in minutes. But this human, he breathed it like mountain air. The inspectors stepped down the ramp. The heat wrapped around them, pressing like a physical weight. Ash danced around their boots as they made their way toward the camp. The closer they got, the clearer the picture became. Dozens of humans, all without helmets, working in the open. Their laughter carried over the roar of the volcano. It was absurd. It was reckless. It was human. Liar raised his wrist display to record. Documenting multiple infractions, he said stiffly. Non-compliance at a scale I have never. He stopped mid-sentence. One of the humans waved at them. You the inspectors? He called, voice rough but friendly. His teeth were bright against his ash-streaked face. We were wondering when you dropped by. Liar's throat clicked. Identify yourself, he demanded. Avery Cole, the man said easily. Expedition coordinator. We got clearance to be here. Liar's processors hesitated. Clearance? For atmospheric exposure. Avery nodded. Medical clearance. Doctor says we're good for 8 hours out here. He smiled, as if that explained everything. Liar's mind ran through possible explanations. Genetic alteration? Faulty sensors? Collective madness? Nothing fit. Yet the man's pulse was steady. His skin wasn't blistering. His voice was strong. You breathe this air, Liar said quietly, and it doesn't harm you. Avery's smile widened. Not much. Stings the throat a bit. But hey, we're used to rough environments. Behind them, more humans emerged, some covered in dirt, some laughing, all breathing freely. One woman leaned close to the ground, brushing dust from a stone tablet. Another wiped sweat from her brow and kept digging. The air around them shimmered with heat and toxins. It was death, and they treated it like weather. Zek's voice cracked. Sir, how do we file this? Liar didn't answer. He stared at the humans, all mixing with disbelief. The Federation's finest filtration systems couldn't match this. The humans didn't need technology to survive. They were born with it. They were breathing poison and thriving. Ash fell from the sky like gray snow as Inspector Liar and Zek followed the unfiltered human deeper into the excavation camp. Every step they took sank slightly into soft, black dust that shimmered faintly with heat. Their helmets registered constant alarms, warnings about sulfur dioxide, carbon ash, and molten particulates. Yet the humans moved through it as if it were clean mountain air. Liar's mind was a war zone of disbelief. His entire career was built on enforcing safety codes. To see a species treat toxic air like oxygen, it was chaos given form. Stay alert, he muttered. We're in the middle of mass violation territory. The human, Avery Cole, didn't seem bothered. He walked with a relaxed confidence, wiping sweat from his forehead with a bare arm coated in black soot. Don't worry, Inspector. Nobody's dying here. Well, not yet, he added with a grin that made Zek's chest tighten. They reached the center of the camp, a maze of metal scaffolding, tents, and glowing machinery half buried in volcanic ash. Massive drills roared like beasts, chewing through obsidian rock. Sparks flashed in the gloom. Humans shouted to one another over the noise, their voices unfiltered and raw. Liar's eyes darted everywhere. Every tool, every cable, every open flame, violation after violation. He could feel the data stacking in his neural implants, building into an endless list of fines. How are they not all dead? He whispered. Zek tried to keep his focus on the scanner. Temperature at ground level, 140 degrees Celsius. Air toxicity, fatal in 4 minutes. Human vitals, he hesitated. Normal. It didn't make sense. A group of workers passed them, carrying a glowing artifact between them. One stopped to nod at the inspectors. His eyes were red from heat, but his smile was easy. Careful where you step. Ground's soft here, he said kindly, before turning back into the inferno. Liar watched him go stunned. They are polite while suffocating, he murmured. Avery led them into a large tent made of heat-resistant polymer. Inside, holographic scanners projected the shape of a buried structure. Something ancient, half-melted, but still intact. You're looking at the wreck of a pre-Federation vessel, Avery said proudly. We think it crashed here over 2 million years ago. Zek tried to focus on the artifact display, but the sight of humans working unmasked dominated his thoughts. A woman knelt beside an open container, brushing away ash with her bare hands. Her nails were cracked, her skin gray with soot, yet she looked perfectly fine. Nearby, a man stood over a plasma torch, cutting through stone while whistling a tune. Mr. Cole, Liar said finally, none of your workers are using respirators. This environment is classified as Class 4 toxic. You understand, that means immediate pulmonary degradation. Avery shrugged. We've got clearance, Inspector. Medical certification from the Federation's Bioadaptation Department. Humans can handle it for about 8 hours before it starts to hurt. Zek's voice cracked through the comms. You mean it physically burns your lungs? Sometimes, Avery said casually. Depends on the wind direction. Some days it's worse. Liar blinked, momentarily speechless. He had expected denial, excuses, not pride. These people weren't just enduring, they were boasting. You are risking your health for archaeology? For discovery, Avery corrected. His expression softened. We've dug on frozen moons, under alien oceans in vacuum. If there's something worth finding, we'll breathe through hell to get it. That line hung in the air like smoke. Even Zek stopped talking. Liar tried to focus. Regardless of your species tolerance, we still need to review your permits and medical records. Talk to Rory Kane, Avery said, waving a hand toward another section of camp. He's our quartermaster. Handles all the paperwork. Probably outside somewhere. He likes the view. The view. Zek repeated in disbelief. Of what? Lava. Avery chuckled. You'll see. Just follow the smell of smoke. Before they could question that statement, Avery turned back to his workers, shouting orders over the roar of machinery. Sparks lit the interior like a storm of fireflies. Liar turned to Zek. We are documenting all of this. Every act of recklessness. Every unfiltered breath. Zek hesitated. Sir, maybe they're not reckless. Maybe they're just built for it. Liar frowned. No species is built for this. Outside, thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from the ground itself. A volcanic vent had opened nearby, spraying glowing embers into the air. The humans barely flinched. They kept working, laughing, moving equipment as if it were just rain. Liar's heart beat faster. He felt something he hadn't felt in years of inspection work. Unease. Fear. And buried somewhere beneath it, admiration. He checked his wrist display. The filter warning was already flashing orange. They had 90 minutes of safe exposure left. Come on, he said, adjusting his helmet seals. Let's find this Rory Kane before my filters melt. Zek followed, glancing back at the humans one last time. Inspector. Yes. Zek's voice was quiet. Do you ever wonder if we're the weak ones? Liar didn't answer. He couldn't. The thought lingered in his mind like the taste of smoke as they stepped out into the shimmering air, toward the man who, according to Avery, handled the paperwork and liked the smell of burning air. The heat outside was worse now. The air shimmered like liquid glass, bending light and sound. Every few seconds, the volcanic horizon flared, a fountain of molten rock painting the sky orange and gold. Inspector Liar and Zek trudged across the ash fields, the sensors in their suits whining in protest. Filter integrity down to 82%, Zek said, tapping his wrist display nervously. We shouldn't be out here this long. Liar didn't respond. His gaze swept the chaotic human camp ahead. Everywhere he looked, humans were working, hauling drills, stacking rock samples, shouting instructions, laughing, in air that could kill almost any other species. Their lungs were bare, their smiles bright. It was insanity wrapped in courage. The inspectors turned a corner past a stack of metal crates, following the trail Avery Cole had pointed out. The smell hit them first, thick, strange, and smoky, even through their helmets. It wasn't volcanic. It was different, almost sweet. Zek's eyes widened. You smell that? What is that? Burning organic matter? Liar's sensors try to classify it. Tar, carbon, nicotine, trace carcinogens. None of it made sense here. We'll find out, he said tightly. Then they saw him. A lone human stood at the edge of the dig site, leaning casually against a metal railing overlooking the lava fields. The glow from the molten river below reflected off his face. He was calm, hands in his pockets, watching the chaos of nature like it was a sunset. And between his fingers, a small brown cylinder. It glowed at the tip like a miniature star. Liar and Zek froze. The man lifted the cylinder to his lips, drew in a deep breath, and exhaled a cloud of thick gray smoke into the toxic orange air. The wind caught it, curling it into beautiful shapes before it disappeared into the volcanic haze. "What is he doing?" Zek whispered. "Suicide, apparently," Liar muttered. They approached slowly, the ground crackling under their boots. Warnings blared louder. Filter degradation, 78%. Air toxicity increasing. Liar's HUD warned, but he ignored it. "Excuse me," Liar called out. "Identify yourself immediately." The man turned his head lazily. His face was rugged, tanned, eyes half shielded by ash and light. He gave a slow grin. "Name's Rory Kane. You must be the inspectors Avery mentioned." Liar blinked. "You are operating in a Class 4 toxic environment without any respiratory protection," and he stopped mid-sentence, scanning the object in Rory's hand. "And you're burning plant material?" Rory chuckled. "It's a cigar, Inspector. Relax. Been doing this since before I left Earth." Zek stammered. "You're inhaling smoke? On purpose? Into your lungs?" "Yup." Rory took another drag, the ember flaring like molten iron. "Good for the nerves. Bad for everything else. Balance of life, I guess." Liar's eyes darted across his data feed. The sensors lit up in red. Carbon monoxide, nicotine, tar, ash, 47 toxic compounds, and the man wasn't even coughing. His heart rate was normal. His oxygen saturation stable. That's biologically impossible. Rory blew another cloud of smoke into the air, watching it twist in the volcanic wind. "Impossible is kind of our specialty, Inspector." Liar stepped closer. "Do you understand what you're breathing? These compounds destroy lung tissue. Even your species shouldn't survive." "Yeah," Rory interrupted. "We shouldn't. But we do. Humans have been breathing worse stuff since we learned how to light fires. You think this is bad? You should visit our capital cities after rush hour." Zek's jaw tightened. "You're poisoning yourself for pleasure?" Rory shrugged. "Pleasure, habit, culture, take your pick. My grandfather smoked every day until he was 97. Said it made him think clearer." He grinned. "Maybe that's just what we tell ourselves." Liar's voice came out thin and metallic. "You're breathing poison inside poison. Do you realize the irony?" "Sure do," Rory said. "We call it Tuesday." The inspectors stared at him in stunned silence. Behind them, the volcano rumbled, a slow, deep growl that made the ground tremble. Ash rained lightly from the sky, coating Rory's shoulders. He didn't even brush it off. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Rory tapped his wrist pad. A soft chime sounded inside Liar's helmet. A new file appeared on his HUD, Federation clearance documents, properly signed, properly formatted. "Medical exemption Form 7 Alpha," Rory said, as if reading their minds. "We're cleared for 8 hours a day, max exposure. Federation approved. Guess our lungs came with built-in filters." Liar's eyes widened as he scrolled through the files. Medical studies, genetic analyses, official seals. All legitimate. All real. "They tested us," Rory continued, watching the lava flow. "Turns out human lungs can filter particulates way beyond normal limits. Some scientists called it an evolutionary accident of a dirty planet. I call it survival." Zek's voice cracked. "You thrive in environments designed to kill you." Rory turned to them, the glow of the volcano reflecting in his eyes. "You survive with machines, Inspector. We survived with pain. Different tools, same result." He took one last drag, flicked the burning end into the lava below, and smiled. "Now," he said, "you boys want a copy of that paperwork? Or are you just here to watch me breathe?" Liar couldn't answer. His brain, logical, ordered, rule-bound, simply had no category for this. Humanity wasn't just defying the rules of safety. They were rewriting the definition of survival. And for the first time in his long career, Inspector Liar felt something he had never filed, never logged, never even admitted to feeling before. Respect. The wind screamed across the volcanic plains as Inspector Liar and Zek stood frozen before the human called Rory Kane. The heat was unbearable. The ash swirled like smoke from a dying star. Yet the man just stood there, breathing it all in, steady, calm, alive. Every instinct in Liar's body told him this scene was wrong. Every line of the Federation's safety code was breaking right before his eyes, and somehow, the universe wasn't punishing it. "Your readings make no sense," Zek whispered, his scanner shaking in his hand. "The toxins, the sulfur, this level of exposure would melt tissue in minutes. And yet I'm fine," Rory said, smiling faintly. "Guess you could say we're built different." Liar's cybernetic eyes zoomed in on the man's skin, pores covered in soot, sweat glistening under the fiery glow. "Your epidermal tissue should be blistering. Your blood oxygen should have dropped below survival range. Your nervous system—" Rory interrupted him by blowing a lazy cloud of cigar smoke in his direction. "You talk a lot, Inspector. You ever try breathing?" Zek stepped back instinctively, his filter alarms blaring louder. "You are contaminating the air even more. That smoke contains 40 toxic compounds." 42, Rory corrected. "You missed a few." He grinned, flicking the ash into the wind. The glowing embers spun upward, carried away like sparks from a forge. Liar felt something inside him fracture, not from anger, but from confusion. His mind was trained to fit everything into a category. Safe or unsafe, clean or contaminated, logical or impossible. But this was none of those. "You call this normal?" Liar asked quietly. "You stand here, breathing poison, adding more poison, and act as though the galaxy's laws of life don't apply to you?" Rory turned toward the glowing horizon. The lava below reflected in his eyes like molten gold. "Inspector, the galaxy's laws were written by creatures who couldn't handle Earth. We come from storms that never end, from air that burns your lungs before you learn to cry. Our world taught us to adapt or die. So yeah, we learned to breathe the impossible." For a long moment, no one spoke. Even a volcano seemed to pause. Zek lowered his scanner, his voice trembling. This is madness." Rory chuckled softly. "Maybe, but madness kept us alive." He tapped his wrist pad again, and the inspector's helmets pinged with another data upload. "Medical reports, genetic charts, oxygen tolerance logs." "Read them," he said. "It's all in there. Your Federation doctors cleared us. Said our lungs evolved with built-in microfiltration, thicker alveolar linings, natural toxin processing. Guess nature gave us what your machines simulate." Liar opened the files, his artificial eyes scanning line after line. The data was irrefutable. Verified signatures, sealed by the Bioadaptation Bureau. Every test confirmed what his senses refused to believe. Humans didn't need help breathing. Their bodies were the filter. Still, something gnawed at him. "If your bodies can resist the toxins," he said slowly, "why make it worse? Why inhale additional smoke?" Rory's smirk faded. For the first time, there was something deeper in his eyes, something that almost looked like melancholy. "Because breathing clean air doesn't mean you're alive, Inspector. Sometimes we need the burn to remember we're still human." Zek stared at him like he was insane. "You're saying suffering is a choice?" Rory shrugged. "Call it a reminder. Comfort breeds weakness. We forget how tough we are until the air hurts again." He looked out at the molten river, where the lava's reflection rippled like firelight on glass. "Back home, we used to say, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you human." The words hung heavy between them, swallowed by the distant thunder of the volcano. Liar's suit beeped again. Filter integrity at 68%. Return recommended. He should have ordered retreat. He should have fined them all, sealed the camp, called in reinforcements. But instead, he just watched the human standing there, smoke curling from his cigar, the heat dancing around him like an aura. This wasn't recklessness. It was defiance made flesh. Zek broke the silence first. "Sir, maybe we should go. Filters are dropping fast." Liar nodded slowly, but his eyes never left Rory. "You're risking your life for what? To dig up a crashed relic?" Rory smiled faintly. "To remember that we still can. You aliens think survival is about hiding behind machines. For us, it's about proving we don't need them." He dropped the cigar and crushed it under his boot. "We were born breathing fire, Inspector. Everything after that was just easier." Liar felt a strange chill despite the heat. There was no arrogance in Rory's tone, just quiet pride. A truth so simple it hurt. The inspector turned back toward the shuttle, but he knew the image would never leave him. A lone human standing on a world of death, breathing smoke inside smoke, and calling it life. As they walked away, Zek whispered, "Sir, what do we even write in the report?" Liar's answer came softly, carried on the roar of the volcano. "Just one line, Zek." The humans breathed, and the world obeyed. The shuttle's outer lights glowed faintly through the smoke as Inspector Liar and Zek returned from the edge of the excavation, their suits streaked with soot and static discharge. Their filters howled warnings now, red icons flashing across their visors, urging immediate retreat. Yet Liar couldn't take his eyes off the file glowing in his HUD. Human atmospheric clearance. Form 7 Alpha, authorized by the Galactic Bioadaptation Council. Every seal was legitimate. Every number was perfect. "Zek," he said quietly, "open the attached data logs." Zek obeyed, his fingers trembling. The holographic text unfolded between them in the smoky air. Charts, scans, biological diagrams, and a recorded report stamped by a dozen alien medical authorities. Human pulmonary systems demonstrate extraordinary particulate tolerance. Filtration occurs through multi-stage alveolar absorption. Estimated resistance, 700% above standard galactic baseline. Duration of exposure before degradation, 8.1 standard hours. Zek blinked. This can't be real. Our species barely survives 5 minutes on a planet like this. Liar scrolled further. It's real. Every signature verified. Every test cross-checked. He stared at one chart showing human lung tissue under magnification. It looked like a living labyrinth, dense, self-cleaning, pulsing with microscopic motion. "They don't even need nanofilters," he murmured. "Their biology is the filter." They stopped near a ridge where the humans had set up a drilling platform. Sparks flew. The sound of laughter echoed faintly through the volcanic wind. Two workers argued about a broken machine, both with bare faces streaked with ash. When the argument ended, they clinked metal cups together and drank something steaming hot, as if toasting their own defiance. Zek shook his head slowly. "I don't get it. They have clearance, technology, Federation access, and they still work like this. They could use domes, oxygen suits, anything." "Because that's not who they are," Liar replied. "They don't endure danger because they must. They endure it because it reminds them they're alive." Zek's scanner beeped again. New data arriving through the camp's network. It was the full set of human exposure studies. Liar accepted the transfer and opened the most recent log. A Federation scientist's voice filled his helmet speakers. While other species rely on synthetic environments, humanity demonstrates an exceptional ability to adapt physiologically under stress. The human lung system expels contaminants at rates unmatched in known biology. Even under Class 4 toxicity, subjects recover full respiratory capacity within minutes. Observations suggest an evolutionary trait born of millennia surviving their own polluted world. The recording ended with a line that struck Liar like a punch. Recommendation: never underestimate what humanity considers breathable. Zek gave a low whistle. Their planet must be horrifying. Perhaps, Liar said, but maybe that horror made them what they are. Just then, a human woman jogged past them carrying a tablet and a drill core sample. She paused briefly, looked up at the inspectors and grinned. "You guys all right in those suits? You look like you're melting." Zek stiffened. "We're at 63% filtration integrity." She laughed. "Rookie numbers. You should see what we inhale back home." And she ran off again, disappearing into the haze. Liar watched her go. Even their humor is weaponized. They moved on, deeper into camp. The humans had erected makeshift lights that flickered in the heat, casting ghostly glows across black rock and molten dust. In the center of the site stood a massive steel canopy shielding a deep excavation pit. Inside it, teams of humans worked shoulder to shoulder, pulling out chunks of alien alloy, remnants of the crashed vessel buried in the magma centuries ago. Every breath they took seemed to challenge the air itself. Zek opened another file. The permit lists daily exposure limits. They're only allowed to stay out here 8 hours before symptoms start. Liar raised a brow. Symptoms? Respiratory irritation, headaches, nosebleeds, sometimes worse. And they still come back. Every day. For a long moment, the two inspectors stood in silence, the roar of the volcano filling their ears. Then Liar said softly, "When machines fail, they use flesh. When air burns, they breathe anyway. Maybe that's why the galaxy keeps underestimating them." Zek didn't answer. His display blinked again. His filter integrity had dropped below 50%. They needed to leave soon. But Liar stayed a moment longer, watching the humans move through smoke and fire, their bodies glowing faintly from the reflected light. They looked like figures out of myth, mortal creatures walking in a place where gods would choke. "Zek," he said finally, "take one last atmospheric reading." Zek did, his device buzzing angrily as it collected data. The results made his stomach twist. Toxin concentration just increased by 20%. Our systems can't handle much more of this. And yet, Liar's gaze lingered on the humans who didn't even flinch. They're still breathing. As they turned back toward the shuttle, he glanced one final time at the volcanic horizon. The Federation's rules had no section for what he had just witnessed. There was no protocol for a species that looked at death, inhaled it, and called it oxygen. "Write it down in the report," he said as they began the slow walk back. "All the facts, all the data. But between you and me, Zek, no machine we've built comes close to what they do naturally." Zek nodded weakly, his breathing ragged inside the suit. "So what do we call this section, sir?" Liar paused. The answer came softly. "Call it what it is," he said. "Proof of breath." The sun of Pyra, 743, began to sink, turning the ash clouds blood red. The volcanic world looked like it was on fire from horizon to horizon. Inside their helmets, Inspector Liar and Zek could hear the desperate hum of overworked filters. Every breath came with a hiss of warning lights. "Filter capacity 41%, Zek muttered. "We've got maybe 20 minutes before we're breathing poison." "Enough time," Liar said, though his voice sounded far less certain than usual. They trudged past the human tents one last time. Every tent flapped like a ghost's wing in the wind. The humans were still working, faces uncovered, hands black with soot, eyes bright with purpose. Someone shouted a joke across the dig site. Another replied with a laugh that cut through the roar of the volcano. Liar stopped walking. "They're laughing," he said quietly. "How can they laugh when the air itself wants them dead?" "Maybe," Zek said slowly. "They stopped caring about what wants them dead." The younger inspector's filter beeped again. He opened his wrist display. His oxygen meter had dipped below safety limits, but he didn't turn back. He was staring now at a group of humans who were gathering samples beside a glowing trench of molten rock. One of them slipped, almost fell, and another grabbed his arm just in time. The two laughed, clapping shoulders, then kept working. Liar's mechanical eyes zoomed in. "They risk everything and treat it like teamwork." "That's the strange part, sir," Zek said. "They choose this." The words echoed in Liar's mind. They chose it. The Federation's worlds were full of species that did everything to avoid discomfort. Controlled climates, filtered air, sterilized soil. Even Liar's people couldn't live without constant atmospheric regulation. And here were humans, choosing to choke on sulfur and ash because there was something buried worth finding. The inspectors reached the shuttle ramp. The airlock hissed as it scanned their suits. The sound of clean oxygen flooding back into the cabin made Zek sigh with relief. "Sweet clarity," he said, pulling off his helmet. His pale face was damp with sweat. "I never want to see this place again." Liar removed his own helmet more slowly. The clean air hit his lungs like a luxury he no longer trusted. He stared at the small clouds of ash still swirling outside. "You realize what this means, don't you?" Zek blinked. "The humans are insane." "No." Liar leaned against the console, watching the orange horizon through the glass. "The humans are free in a way none of us are." Zek frowned. "Free? They're working in hell." "Yes," Liar said softly. "And they call it progress." For a long while, they said nothing. The shuttle's systems whirred, scanning atmospheric data. Then a chime echoed, an incoming message. It was from Avery Cole, the human expedition leader. Thanks for the visit, inspectors. Sorry about the air. If you ever come back, bring lighter suits or better lungs. Attached was a photograph. The entire human crew standing on a ridge, the volcano exploding in the background, ash swirling around them like a storm halo. None of them wore masks. Every face was smudged with black and lit by a defiant grin. Zek stared at the image. They look proud, like they've conquered something. They have, Liar said. They've conquered fear. He leaned forward, activating the shuttle's engines. The tremor of liftoff vibrated through their seats. As they rose, the camp below shrank into specks of orange light scattered across black stone. Zek looked at him. What do we write in the report, sir? That they broke every rule we have. Liar shook his head. That they obeyed a rule we forgot existed. Which one? The first one, Liar replied. Adapt or die. They chose the better option. The volcano roared one last time beneath them, like a living creature mourning their departure. Clouds of molten gas burst upward, but the humans didn't run. They merely adjusted their goggles and kept digging. Liar watched until the fire became a faint spark in the distance. He felt something heavy settle in his chest, a mix of awe and envy. Machines needed filters. Laws needed protection, but humans only needed will. He opened the ship's log and began dictating. Subject: Human expedition on Pyra, 743. Conclusion: Environmental exposure confirmed. Medical exemptions valid. Recommend reclassification of species threat resilience from moderate to extreme. Additional note: he hesitated, glancing once more at the photo. Humanity breathes where others pray. The engines flared brighter, lifting them into the night sky. As the volcanic world faded below, Zek sat in silence, still trying to process what they had seen. Liar closed the report with a quiet final thought that would never make the official record. They don't need our air. Maybe one day, we'll need theirs. The shuttle climbed through the ash clouds, its hull trembling as it pierced the toxic sky of Pyra, 743. Below, the volcanic world burned like a living furnace. To Inspector Liar, it felt less like leaving a planet and more like escaping a lesson he wasn't ready to learn. Inside the cabin, the air was clean again, sterile, filtered, perfect. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. Zek slumped into his seat, exhaustion written across his face. Filters holding steady now, he said quietly. Safe and clean. Liar didn't answer. His gaze was locked on the fading glow below. Clean, he repeated. Maybe that's the problem. For a long moment, the only sound was the steady hum of the engines. Then Liar spoke, almost to himself. We spend our lives protecting ourselves from the universe, shielding, filtering, regulating. But humans, they walk into hell just to see what's inside. Zek turned toward him. You're starting to sound impressed, sir. Liar gave a dry laugh. Impressed? I'm terrified. They survive what kills everyone else, and they don't even act like it's worth mentioning. A soft chime interrupted them. The onboard console displayed an incoming message. It was an automatic transmission from the human camp below, broadcast on open frequencies. Liar hesitated, then tapped play. A woman's voice crackled through the speakers, light and cheerful despite the static. To anyone listening out there, this is the Pyra 743 team. We found something big. The readings from the crash site show power signatures older than the Federation itself. Might take a few more days to dig through. Don't worry about us. We'll keep breathing. The transmission ended with laughter and the faint roar of lava in the background. Zek frowned. They're staying down there? In that atmosphere? Liar nodded slowly. 8 hours a day. Every day. And, smiling while they do it, he leaned back, exhaling. For the first time in years, he felt small. The Federation's rules suddenly seemed fragile, built for comfort, not survival. Humans live by something older, something primal. Zek's voice was quiet. Sir, what do we even file in the report? Liar thought for a long time, then activated the voice log. Final report. Expedition 743. Subject: Human operations on Class 4 toxic world. Result: fully compliant. No violations found. Observation: humans continue to operate without artificial filtration, citing biological adaptation. Recommendation: future inspectors proceed with caution. Not because of the danger, because the danger doesn't seem to apply to them. He paused, fingers hovering over the console. Then he added one final note. Personal remark: unofficial, the humans did not defeat the environment. They became it. He sent the report to headquarters and powered down the recorder. Outside, the volcanic world shrank to a red ember among the stars. Liar stared at it for a long time. In his imagination, he could still see the humans working, breathing ash, digging through flame, laughing in the face of annihilation. Zek broke the silence. You think they'll survive long down there? Liar gave a faint smile. Survive? They'll thrive. And when the rest of us finally run out of filtered air, they'll still be breathing. The stars ahead glimmered cold and distant, but to Liar they no longer seemed unreachable. They seemed human. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, feeling the ship hum beneath him. Somewhere deep down, he realized what truly separated humans from every other species he had inspected. It wasn't technology. It wasn't intelligence. It was the simple, terrifying refusal to stop. They would breathe fire if that's what it took. As the shuttle jumped to warp, the report file flashed across the Federation's data network, ending with Liar's final line. One that would be quoted for years among inspectors who still didn't believe it. They needed filters. Humans were born with one, made of stubbornness, pain, and will. And far below, on a dying world of smoke and magma, the humans kept digging, lungs full of poison, hearts full of iron. Because to be human was to breathe where no one else could.